Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you could join us. This is our very first Texas Leadership Lab. And I know we've got several people registered for this morning, so they'll be coming on in. I've turned that waiting room off. But we are so excited to have you with us. If you're able to keep your camera on, we want you to do that. We want you to also find the mute and unmute button because this isn't like our subscriber series where you listen and I talk. This is a collaborative experience. This is really a lab for our leaders. So I'm going to take a few moments to just introduce myself and some of the colleagues that I have on the call here. I'm Corey Camp. I'm Chief Learning Officer here at Sibme. I've been using Sibme for over a decade, founded as a regional specialist in Waco when I was at Region 12 ESC, and have been supporting the work here as a Sibme team member for the last 8 years, along with my partner in crime, Jenny Sulfridge, who's our Director of Customer Success. Jenny and I together really lead the Texas team. We focus specifically on Texas implementation, and for me, specifically on TIA. So for those of y'all who are here and using Sibme for that, welcome. And then I also have Doug on the call. Doug's actually heading out to Region 5, so he's traveling in his car this morning, but he is our Texas account executive. He's also one of our virtual coaches. And so he comes not only with administrative experience in Texas and in other states, but he also has used Sibme, just like Jenny and I, for a while. So we are your Texas team, and we're again really excited about this leadership lab. I'm going to have you start out by finding that chat. I'm going to drop a welcome in there, and I would love for you to introduce yourself, what your role is, what district you're from or organization you're from, and if there's something specific you are coming today for, let me know. And then we will open it up to a poll here in a moment. Welcome, Courtney. And as I mentioned, this is your session today. So these leadership labs that we have, we really hope for them not to be just an opportunity for us to share with you a few best practices and a few new releases and upcoming updates, but also for you all to get to have conversations, get to know each other, understand who else in your region or in the state is also using Sibme. So great to see so many familiar faces. I worked with just about every one of you, or will be soon. Some folks who are brand new to Sydney are also on, so welcome for that. All right, I'm going to throw out a poll while you're introducing yourself. If you haven't introduced yourself, go ahead and do that in the chat. But I've started a poll on your screen, and this is just to understand better how your district is using Sibme. I think most of you are here with a TIA observation use case, but I know we also have some folks who are using Sibme in coaching, in PLCs, or maybe those are one of your focuses, but you are really just getting started. So let me know in the chat once we've had everyone participate with the poll. I'll go ahead and let you know who else in here. And then I would love if you have something you want to share about your Sydney experience, I'd love for you to come off of mute and share that. Or if that's not possible because it's noisy around you this morning, you can drop it into the chat as well.
I'll just say, using the Sibme, I'm using it for more of an instructional, for coaching and PLC purposes. And it's been very beneficial, especially the video part where the teachers can be videoed or recorded, and I can make notes alongside their videos so they can see in real time what they're saying and my notes that go exactly with what they're saying. I think that's been one of the most beneficial features that I've noticed as an instructional coach.
I love that, Courtney. Sibme stands for Seeing is Believing Me. And like you hear most educational companies say, we were designed by educators for educators, but we really mean that, especially for the classroom teacher. So it was designed to help a teacher be able to see their instruction and share that with a peer or a coach. Now, a lot of times as we're getting started, we as leaders are driving and facilitating and prompting that sharing and that work. And it's not always around video. That's the other thing I love about Sibme is it doesn't have to be video focused, but it is really the most disruptive part of the technology that Sibme can bring into your workflows. So, and by disruptive, that's in a good kind of disruption. So I love that. Anyone else using Sibme with teachers? Because I know we've got a lot of folks on here who have been using it as an admin tool as you're doing observations for more of that TIA focus. But I'd love to hear from others who have teachers using this as well, whether that's in a coaching or PLC or alongside TIA.
So we're using it. Oh, hang on. Let me mute for announcements. Someone else talking.
Oh, go ahead, Benita. Thanks. Benita's at Pittsburgh ISD, and I just met with their teachers yesterday for our second session. So their teachers got introduced to Sibme at the end of January and were prompted to just use it as a tool for themselves, just like their admins were, to record their class instruction and get some T-test specific feedback. And we just kind of left them with that. And then yesterday, their teachers learned about all of the other features Sibme has for a teacher, especially the ability to help analyze student work, to help with lesson planning and lesson design, to focus on things maybe beyond T-tests specific that we're still going to support that TIA designation. So, Ronnie, go ahead and share.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So we've used Sibme for 8-ish years so far, and it's definitely been an evolution process um, in a very good way, in an exciting way. And kind of where we're at currently is we utilize it for our teachers self-record and use it as a self-reflection tool in our PLC process, it's mostly around the internalization of um, content and practice, right? How am I using it and or how am I practicing the actual pedagogy piece? How am I teaching and what does it look like? And what we've really grown to get excited about here in Shepherd ISD is the AI piece of it, and teachers being able to pull in that T-test rubric and kind of get some automatic feedback with low costs involved, right? So there's no evaluation actually attached, but they're able to get some pointers because we are a TIA district and our TA walkthrough is obviously focused on that domain 2 and 3. So um, being able to really focus on those domain 2 dimensions and get that feedback quickly and look at ways they can improve that practice has been a win for many of our particularly our starting teachers, younger teachers, newer teachers, or those who are working on becoming a teacher. All those apply, and so that's currently the way we're using it. I think the most right now across all of our campuses.
Yeah, Ronnie, it has an evolution is a great word for how things have been used in Shepherd ISD. I think it's been really cool to see the teachers really driving a lot of that work, and then admins to kind of jump in as y'all became TIA focused and realized to me for that to help with that data capture and calibrate not just your administrators but your teachers as well on those, especially domains 2 and 3.
Yeah, and I would definitely don't want to miss the opportunity to echo our administrators' um, excitement around being able to not only record but capture the transcripts. It has definitely have been a lifesaver and a huge help towards observation and just those walkthrough pieces, being able to capture all that's happening, not just what they may have seen on the first swipe. So definitely want to shout out there too.
That's awesome. Benita, it's like
I'm
announcements
back.
are
I
done. Yeah, go
didn't
ahead.
think y'all wanted to hear announcements this morning. I ditto everything everyone else has said. We've been using them, this is our first year, but we've been using it the same way. And as far as the TIA part of it, I love that in the past, I was so busy scripting because I was afraid I would miss something. And so I was looking down and writing, and I wasn't able to see. So I love that Sibme now can do the transcript so they hear it all. And then I can look up and see and be able to record those moments that are nonverbal. When a teacher taps a student on the shoulder to say, to get back on focus, that I may have missed from before. As far as teachers, one thing that we did yesterday um, is we have report card conferences with our parents yesterday, and we are rubric based report cards. And so it's kind of hard to explain that to parents. And so we took a picture of the rubric and then took a picture of the report card and basically said, "Hey, Sydney, help me. What do I need to talk about with this teacher?" And it gave a script of their strengths, their weaknesses, some teaching points. And our teachers were all over it because I have a couple teachers that are a little nervous, newer teachers nervous teaching, talking about parents. And so it gave them a script to share with the parents. Now, I told my teachers, still, you've got to, add more to it, but it made them a little more comfortable with it. And then the other thing that they're starting to do is I learned about scan the other day. I was taking one picture at a time. So yesterday I learned about the scan feature. Yay. But scanning all the writing series that the teachers did in class and say, okay, what's my next teaching point based on these writing samples? What are my students' weaknesses? What are my students' strengths? What needs to be my next teaching point? Things like that. So that's just a few. And what small groups, if you take pictures, exit tickets, or writing, help me group my students based on what skills they need. So that's something we're working on and learning, and I'm excited. But Sydney is highly recommend. Highly, I love it. I'm still learning, and I absolutely love it.
I love that. I love that. And if you are interested in more of any of these kind of stories, I know several of our districts this year who are new this year, many of them, not most of them, but many of them have started just as this is an admin only tool. We just need to save our admin from all of the pressure that they have with these observations for TIA. And so I see several of you nodding your head like, yeah, that's kind of where we're starting. But it can, sometimes it is, I'm not sure if teachers are in our budget, or I'm not sure how teachers will receive this. Will a teacher actually use this? You'll hear from those who have teachers in their accounts. Yes, like by and far, yes. Now, there's still some messaging around that, some key strategic leadership moves that you can do to get things up and going. It really does take 2 to 3 years for kind of full adoption to happen. But that's what our team's here for. That's what Jenny and I and Doug are here to help you strategize and plan for and move into. So if that's something that you need, we even have things like missions that are like these little recipe cards for a teacher on how, if I want to look at grouping students, what do I do? Where do I start? Is it a scan? Is it a picture? Is it a video? And then how do I use that AI? A lot of my work these past few years have been around AI literacy and supporting districts in understanding what AI is and isn't able to do and how to talk to it. Feels a lot like talking to a teenager. Sometimes you feel like, man, this is the coolest thing ever, this co-pilot. And then other days you're like, come on, co-pilot, how come you aren't giving me the same response I got yesterday? It really is all in your prompting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So I want to give you a chance to, if you've got a question for someone in the room, maybe just a general question, that's also what today is for. You'll get a survey after the session today. I'll give it to you at the end, but I'll also email it to everybody who registered so that you can tell me how today went and what you would want more out of if we did more of these leadership labs. But for right now, I like to be responsive. What is one thing you want to walk away from today's session? So you registered, you saw that email, you know some of what's planned. I am going to give some sneak peek. I am going to talk a little bit about best practices within Sibme, but is there something specific you want to walk away from today's session with? We've got about half of our time left, so drop that in the chat for me. And again, if you've got a question for any of our folks who've shared, or if you haven't had a chance to share, you can also pop that in the chat or unmute. All right. Thanks, Benita, for kicking that off. Yeah, just more ideas for teacher use. Love that. tools that you may not know about. I think that that is great. Yeah, Courtney, it might be the scan feature that Benita hadn't realized yet. And I think you guys have just at Pittsburgh been using it since December. So hadn't come across that yet because we were focusing on just capturing live instruction through the recording. So we'll definitely talk through those things.
Yeah, I
Crystal.
actually wrote down that scan feature as she was talking because I hadn't found that yet, and that'd be a great tool.
Oh, yes, it is a really great way to capture, and especially for PLCs. So, some of our PLCs are scanning in student work samples, and everybody just shares that to the PLC huddle. Everyone's got a couple of samples, and then with one of our brand new features, the one that's going to help Crystal with the summatives that she's here for, you can compare across those different scans from those different classrooms or different times. So, I love that. Yeah, we will definitely show that scan feature. And she's already seen the update. She was in one of the groups a few weeks ago when that first released, the multi-artifact, which we'll talk about. But there is a sneak peek that I am going to show. So I love that. Keep those things coming. Use that chat. Feel free to unmute at any time. If you've worked with me, you know I'm pretty informal when it comes to these sessions because I know things pop in our head and we've got burning questions and I want you to have a chance to ask those. So, a couple of quick notes around just best practice. First and foremost, I want to make sure that if you are using Sibme as a tool or with an observation tool, specifically for TIA, but even if you're using this more as a curriculum focus, we've got some Region 7 folks here. I know their Bluebonnet team is using Sibme to support the curriculum work that's happening within their districts. And they use this feature as well, even though they're not using it with t-test, they're using it with their classroom observation tools for math, for content agnostic pieces. And that is when you have a framework embedded in Sibme. And so what do I mean by that? I'm going to share my screen here and show you this in my workspace. When you have one of those frameworks in, so t-test is the common one for most of us here, but again, it can be if you've adopted a new curriculum and you've got an observation tool looking at the fidelity and implementation of that curriculum, it can be those look-fors. A framework is just a space for look-fors or rubrics that we use as an observation tool. When you are using something like this and you want the co-pilot to give you feedback, evidence towards that, we want to make sure that you are using, if you started using Sibme this summer, you may not be aware of this button, and I want to make sure you are that when you open up Insights, instead of typing at the bottom, tell me how this teacher scores against t-tests, because we have t-tests embedded or whatever your framework is, you want to do 2 extra clicks. You want to click on the gray prompt button, and then you want to click this button here that says assess recording using the attached framework. Here's what happens when you click this button and why we highly recommend it. First, it gives a much more deterministic approach to looking at the data, meaning less hallucination and coloring outside the lines and more focused specific evidence, which if we're using this for evaluation is incredibly important. So we've really worked with our teenage co-pilot to say, okay, we want you to make sure that you're doing this in this way. Behind that tiny button is 4 to 5 pages of detailed instructions on exactly what to look for, how to look for it, and what to give you. So that if calibration is one of your focuses in your district or on your campus, this is going to be the best way to do that with something like a generative AI that's going to give you responses maybe different across different users. This ensures that every single time you get each and every dimension looked at through the Copilot, it gives a suggested rating. Remember, these are just suggestions. It's not an answer key, but then it shows its thinking. It gives you the specific evidence that's time-stamped, or it'll even tell you where in this one doesn't have a lesson plan. If I had a lesson plan, it would have the lesson plan pages attached to it or sections, but it also gives you a justification for why it's recommending that element of the rubric. And then strengths, areas of growth, and action steps. So while this is a long, in-depth report, and you may just be looking for domain 2, this is going to be the best way to start that conversation with the co-pilot. Now, one of the resources that I want to share, I'm actually going to drop it into our meeting chat so you can grab it from here. I will also be sure to send a follow-up email to everyone who registered so that you can have it in your email as well. But I've been crowdsourcing for the past year. What do admins put into the co-pilot? Because this is just the start of the conversation. I can then continue following up. What are you putting in after you press that button? And that's really where this prompts to try comes in place. And maybe it is that you are just gathering walkthrough data and you're just focusing on domain 2 and 3, but you need it in less bullets and more like a narrative summary. And you want specific quotes. This one's actually one I stole from my sister-in-law in Tomball. She uses this almost every time afterwards because this is what she has to put into her fields in Strive. Or maybe you're calibrating you've got a different rating in mind for a particular area. So you might put in something like this. Hey, I rated this differently. Here's why. Is there something else I should consider? Or in this example, I rated this differently. What other data would you need to change your rating from developing to accomplished? And also thinking about those teacher goals. So this is something, if you haven't received this yet, this is a really great resource. But what I'm really excited to show you, if you haven't discovered it yet, is the ability to not just do this kind of insights on a single artifact, but to do it across many. Now, this is where that doc scanning feature you might want to come in play. So if you haven't discovered the scan feature, that is within the Sibme app on any Android, iOS tablet device, where you see that green plus button. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just highlight myself here for a moment to show you this. So green plus button, it's right about in the middle. It's a take a photo allows you to take one picture at a time, and they each upload as an individual file, which is fine with this new feature I'm going to show you. But maybe you want to look at a collection of things, and it can be a photo or it can be a document that you scan. So maybe some student work. This allows you to scan in multiple pages of maybe it's essays, maybe it's as you're walking across the room, you've got student work that you're looking at, or you've got a lesson materials. So you're able to scan those in. It'll upload right to your workspace, or if you're doing this from that inside that huddle, it'll automatically upload. And then I can connect it to that video, or maybe I'm looking at it as just a separate thing. So what Benita talked about was scanning in the rubric and those report cards that they've got printed out, and then being able to ask questions to help get a script for these teachers on those parent-teacher meetings. And that's involving one of our newest features. If you're looking for summatives, this is also where you want to tune in because this is our multi-artifact. So a couple of weeks ago, we released the ability to not only look at insights on a single file. We've been telling you if you want to look at insights, you have to put it in Sibme and open it. Well, now, instead of opening it, you can select it. It does not have to be a recording. It can be recordings and or scans, images, files. Here's a lesson plan that I have. Maybe I want to do multiple recordings, audio or video. I will now see that insights over here twinkling on the right-hand side. So not in the blue bar, it's a few steps below that. I can then, I have to categorize exactly what I've put in here, and then I'm able to ask it any question that I want to. So this feature has been huge for both teachers and for leaders. So thinking about how you might use this feature, looking at preparing for summatives, you upload or have and you select in your workspace or that huddle a few of those observations and walks, maybe a couple of other resources that you have where you are, maybe you've got that pre and post observation data, pre-conference data, selecting those things, and then telling it to analyze to help you, draft that summative report.
Corey, can you show me where you got that from,
Where I
or
got
how you got
this
to
resource,
the multi artifact? How you got to that
how I got
point?
to the insights?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to unselect here. You can go into your workspace or huddle,
Okay.
either in a folder or if you've just got them hanging out here like I do, like my Google Drive, it's very unorganized. You just hover over the thumbnail and you'll
Okay.
get the little checkbox. Once you've
Okay.
selected more than two or more than one, on the right, it's below the green plus button.
Ah, okay.
Find
I see.
it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then you'll just have to select continue, and then you're in that familiar chat. Okay. But this allows you, for those who are using this in PLCs and coaching, again, uploading multiple student work samples, thinking about vertical and horizontal alignment. So let's focus a little bit more on the curriculum, or how we're implementing that curriculum, that HQIM. So this resource that you see on my screen, I'm going to share with you as well, so that you've got that to take a look at. So let me know in the chat, how might you use this multi-artifact if you're just learning about it? And then I want to give you a sneak peek of what's coming, especially for those using Sibme in observations, whether that's coaching or as appraisers. We've got some pretty exciting things coming into Sibme, but take a moment to let me know in the chat how you might use multi-artifact. Is it for summatives? Is there something else that you're looking for? And then I will drop in this resource on my screen. Yeah, looking at growth over time, absolutely. The teachers in Pittsburgh, Benita's district, were talking yesterday at the intermediate level about how I could use this with student work, and thinking about, like, if I upload some work samples of a student before an RTI meeting or before an IEP meeting to be able to help me identify trends and patterns and gaps in their understanding, and maybe even start to draft those IEP goals and objectives. So super powerful for that. Yep, the scanning feature. So getting in some of those student products in addition to those instructional components. I love that. Now let's take a look at what's coming from Sibme. So we've been working on this multi-artifact for a while, but we've also been working and have been doing lots of, some of you have even been on some of our focus groups. This summer, we'll be releasing an observations module. So a place, if you don't already have this, to keep track of, you're already capturing all this walkthrough and observation data in Sibme. What if in Sibme you could also organize those walks, be able to see that information? So this will be fully district configurable with that native video, the native AI, to be able to look at, for example, Adrian, and ask Copilot, all right, I'm preparing for step 4 of the observation. Help me plan for that. And it's going to have that goal setting in mind. It's going to have all of that data from the where you are in observation 1 and be able to give that back to you. Or look across multiple teachers that are on your caseload. So if this is something that you're interested in, let us know. I'll have a place in the survey for you to tell us about that, because this is something we're really excited about releasing, and we're looking for districts who are interested in having a tool like this, maybe wanting to pilot that as well. So that is coming soon this summer. Yeah, it's definitely, if you're one of those who keeps a lot of information in a spreadsheet, or you've been kind of pulling it from multiple places, again, we're really working on, you're already doing this work here. The evidence is here. Why not keep the data here as well if this is something that your district needs? All right. Well, I know we're at the end of our time, and it never feels like enough time. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. I will be sending you all a few things. I'm going to send these resources plus a teacher resource for multi-artifact. I'll also share a link to this quick survey. There's 6 questions on here. It's anonymous, but you can leave information if you want us to reach back out to you for some support on some of these ideas, or if you want more information for that new release coming out next year. So let us know. Please do take time to fill out that survey, because I want to know if you want more of these leadership labs and what from today was best for your experience, so that I can make sure that the next one really fits your needs. All right. I'm going to hang on for a few moments. If you've got any questions for me, let me know. But thank you so much for spending some time this morning and have a great day. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, let me grab that link in the chat. If you're wanting to grab that survey link, there it is. It's in the chat if you're still with me. And again, I will email all of the things to you all. Thanks so much for joining, y'all. It was great seeing everybody.